There's a line in the sand. Where will you stand?
All right, Hanok, welcome to the Israel Update, everybody, live from Modine and Franklin, North Carolina, as we enter into these last days before Passover. You're probably busy, starting to get busy with the leaven there, or
Are you asking me?
yeah.
Starting to get busy? No, that was like a week and a half ago. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay. So
things are happening all the time.
you've already taken care of all that.
Uh, Not taking care of all that,
Okay.
no. But things
Okay.
largely
Well,
done,
yeah,
not finished.
we're gonna go. I think Friday we're going to get really serious about it. So, right up to the last minute. All right. I know that there was a meeting with Netanyahu and Trump yesterday. I have only been able to watch a short amount of that, but there are some high points that you wanted to go to. So I guess
Yeah,
instead of listening to an hour of the two of them ramble, I'll just listen to a
I'll
few
give you the
minutes of
summary.
you. Okay.
Okay. So first of all, and it's interesting because I realize how many times I've said this, but when I speak about President Trump, I am only speaking about him as an Israeli from the
Yeah.
Israeli perspective. So don't write me silly notes saying, and who would you have voted for? I mean, it's not the issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I want to start out by saying it was very difficult for me when I was speaking in America last summer. The Republican National Convention had just
Mhm.
happened, and I cannot tell you how many people brought up to me how Kamala Harris's husband is a Jew, how Donald Trump's daughter is a Jew. Y'all are missing the whole scene. If we have time today, I've got a whole section on American Jews that I'd like to speak about.
Okay.
But first things first. Also, don't tell me Donald Trump loves Israel.
Okay.
Donald Trump is a friend of Israel.
Hmm.
And the caveat to that is he is a fair weather friend of Israel, depending on his mood. And that was so clearly evident in this meeting with Netanyahu. Netanyahu was in Hungary, which is significant on another level. We'll have to save that for another day. He gets summoned to the White House. There was great speculation in Israel as to what was going on. Um, no one believed it was strictly about tariffs.
Hmm.
And the general feeling in Israel was that America was actually preparing to strike Iran, probably in conjunction with Israel.
Hmm.
And this is what they were getting together. I was the lone voice amongst all these Israeli conversations at the gym and the supermarket, overhearing things, butting in, which by the way is a classic Israeli thing. Like
Hmm.
you're on the line, with someone and they're talking about saying,
Yeah.
well, my nephew is not getting a pass to go home for the Seder. That must mean, and then I butted in and said, no, it doesn't mean anything other than the fact that your nephew is not going to be there.
Yeah.
This is the Hebrew version of how to make friends and influence
Yeah,
people.
it is. It is.
So, so Trump meets with Netanyahu for about an hour and then has what's supposed to be a joint press conference. But if you look at it, the cameras are all on Trump. And even when Netanyahu speaks, he's generally off camera, which is bizarre.
Hmm.
Okay, the first thing is Trump announces that there are talks beginning with Iran. He said they're direct talks.
Hmm.
Iran says they're indirect talks beginning this coming Saturday. Okay. Netanyahu did as much as he could to keep his face blank, but the idea that America is negotiating with Iran, now understand something. Within the last week or so, information was put out in the press from American authorities that because of America's pressure, Iraq was beginning to disarm. And then we find out that Iran has just sent a whole slew of ballistic missiles to Iraq.
Oh, great.
Surprise, surprise, surprise. Okay, so the idea that talks will begin with Iran. Now, Netanyahu, of course, when he came back here, said right away, well, the only way that, Iran's nuclear ambitions are going to stop is if the program is dismantled and torn. It's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. But on the issue of tariffs, now I have to explain something because Americans are all for tariffs because they think it'll be better for the American economy. China is the really bad guy
Yeah. Yeah.
when it comes to foreign trade, not Israel.
And by the way,
But
Americans are totally split on this issue.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a definite maybe.
Yeah.
You know, okay. So a 17% tariff on Israel is expected to cost Israel up to $2.3 billion in our economy. It will likely lead to between 15 and 23,000 jobs lost.
Hmm.
And if the tariff includes pharmaceuticals and computer chips, the losses to Israel would be over $3 billion.
Hmm.
Now, we both know a small group of people in America that support Israel and buy Israeli products, buy Israeli wine and other things. Imagine each and every one of those items costing 17% more just on tariffs alone.
Hmm.
Okay. So, but I've got some direct quotes because Donald Trump was the most Donald Trumpish that he's ever been, at least that I heard. Um, on the issue of tariffs, he, whatever thought comes into his head, he speaks. So he says, quote, don't forget we help Israel a lot, dot, dot, dot. We give Israel $4 billion a year. That's a lot. He then turns to Bibi and says, smirking, congratulations, by the way. That's pretty good. Okay. Then he goes on to say, we give Israel billions a year. Billions. It's one of the highest of anyone. We give a lot of countries money. You wouldn't believe it.
Hmm.
Okay. So, doesn't look like there's going to be any help with tariffs, even though before this was announced, Israel made sure to drop any tariff,
Yeah.
any American
Yeah.
product. Okay. Trump goes on to say, this is like the theater of the absurd. I don't understand why you guys gave up Gaza. It's beachfront property. Notice something. He didn't say Israel gave up Gaza 20 years ago for peace.
Yeah.
It, in effect, created an independent state.
Yeah.
Now, look what's happened.
Yeah. I did hear
Let's
that
draw a
part.
conclusion. Doesn't say, all he talks about is beachfront property.
Mm-hmm.
Beachfront property.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then, I mean, it goes from bad to worse. 2 weeks ago, Erdogan, the despot that runs Turkey, and I've been warning our listeners about Turkey because here it is. They had slotted several airfields, air bases in Syria that they were going to take over.
Yeah.
Before they did that, we went and demolished them. Okay. Erdogan, at the end of Eid al-Fitr, the end of Ramadan last week, called on Allah to, quote, destroy Zionist Israel, unquote. This is 1 week ago. So what does President Trump say about Erdogan? He describes him as very smart and congratulated him for, quote, taking over Syria. He then goes on to say to Netanyahu about Turkey, this is quote, any problems you have with Turkey, I think we can solve. We, Trump. As long as you are reasonable, you have to be reasonable, unquote. So
Mm-hmm.
we in Israel are not happy.
Yeah.
Everyone who believed, and again, I cannot tell you how many people have said to me, well, let me put it this way. If everyone who's assured me that Trump loves Israel gave me $10 I would be able to pay my $3,100 airfare coming
Yeah.
up to America in June. Okay? Seriously. He loves himself and he loves to be in power. I understand that. But this wasn't like being blindsided on one thing. This is like being blindsided on everything. Um, and you'll notice something when Obama went ahead and made a deal with Iran across the political spectrum in Israel, everyone was like, banging pots and yelling and screaming. It's not a word in the press
Mhm.
because everyone is like, you know, it's like that time you're standing around the schoolyard and someone without warning punches you right in the solar plexus and like you can't say anything, you can't breathe, you can't take a breath.
Hmm.
So that's what's happening.
You
That's the
know,
big news.
as you're laying all this out, and you know my reaction from when the Trump Gaza video was put out.
Yeah.
That was beyond description for me.
Yeah.
What we're seeing on the world stage is very simple. That, as you said, Trump loves Trump. Friend to Israel, as long as it helps that business deal. All right.
That's right.
I've been watching something for a long time, and I know people may think, well, that's kind of frivolous in the midst of all these things. But Trump is a big supporter of the Live Golf Tournament, which basically put is being is detrimental to the PGA in America.
I remember you told me, yeah.
This whole thing about getting in bed with Saudi Arabia. And now it looks like America and the golf tournament is going to be in bed with Live. I'm not following it as in detail. That is totally frivolous to me. But what I've seen for many years is this, that Trump really doesn't mind who he's in bed with, if in the end it profits him. And this
So
is what is happening with Iran. This is what is happening in Syria. If Israel is the nice bedfellow that gets Trump a better deal, he's going to be with you. But the moment that he sees a better deal coming from somewhere else, it's like the person that says, I only shop at mom and pop stores. There's no, I'm not leaving. I'm not going to go over there until the business deal until they have the 2-for-1 special at Lowe's. Then you're going to sell out Ace Hardware in a moment because
yeah.
it's about your wallet. And that
Okay.
is what is happening right here in front of us.
It's really amazing. And I want to remind our listeners that I have a real concern that during some point in the Trump presidency, as he wants to ink a deal with Saudi Arabia and wants to include them, among others, into the Abraham Accords, don't be shocked that there would be a proposed entity somewhere in some way, shape, or form called Palestine.
Mm-hmm.
This is, so okay. So all this is going on. So let's go on to other news. The IDF has admitted that based on our sources, we have only destroyed
Yeah,
25% the tunnels in Gaza.
that's amazing.
And admittedly, there are still some that connect into Egypt. So now there are some good reasons why that is. One is there was a concern about quote unquote civilian
Mm-hmm.
casualties. Two, there was a concern about the lives of the hostages.
Mm-hmm.
But we have, and having 75% of their tunnels to hide in is why to this day, a year and a half into this war, we're now more than a year and a half into the
Yeah.
war. We have not been able to destroy Hamas. Now, let's quickly move into those protests that we began seeing and we touched upon very briefly last week in Gaza are real.
Hmm.
Now, understand when I say that there are people in Gaza who are protesting against Hamas doesn't mean they're good guys.
Yeah.
It was the rank and file Gazan that attacked our hostages as they were being brought in, that were celebrating, that were beating them, that were spitting on them, that raped them. All these things. These are the quote unquote Gazans. But it is fascinating still that think about this. The only place in the entire world that there are demonstrations against Hamas are Gaza.
Hmm.
Not a single college campus. They still wear, Hamas and Hezbollah,
Yeah.
flags and headpieces. It's astounding.
Hmm.
It's astounding. Okay, moving right along. Um, I follow statistics, not because I like it, but because it has valuable information. Because we've heard rumors that since the war began and since violent anti-Semitism has exploded worldwide, that there were large numbers of Jews preparing to make Aliyah who had submitted the forms and the documentation necessary to become Israelis and to be, along with that, to be recognized as Jews by our Ministry of the Interior. And in looking at statistics of American Jews, which is the second largest Jewish community in the entire world, I began seeing some numbers that made no sense to me. And again, I'm not a linear thinker, so sometimes that's really helpful. I began seeing something saying there were 7 million Jews in America. Then I saw 7.5 million Jews in America. That would make Israel the second largest Jewish community in the
Hmm.
entire world. Ain't happening, guys. Ain't happening. Now, first of all, the problem is where are these statistics coming from? Among the most legitimate sources that I've been able to track down, they're talking about 6.3 million Jews in America.
Okay.
Now, the problem is it's not like it's not like there's a census where you can know exactly. So 6.3 million Jews in America, approximately 7.3 million here in Israel. And then, you've got 458,000 in France, 400,000 in Canada, 313,000 in the UK. I mean, I can go down the whole list. But the bottom line is they're not coming. And here it is in Israel. It was recently released that 8,300 people in the tech industry have left Israel since the war started. We're having a brain drain.
Mm.
So we've got like one challenge on another challenge on another challenge. What I find astounding is as I encounter people, because tourism is beginning to come back, as I encounter, and for Pesach, uh, Jewish people from around the world
Hmm.
have been, begun coming to Israel. And I get into conversations with them and I ask them like, what's life like back home for you? Oh, this and they, they've had to take the mezuzah off the door,
Hmm.
and they don't wear any Jewish symbol, and they don't wear a kippah. They don't. So, are you guys considering Aliyah? No, 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 no.
Hmm.
Because the economics of life are so much easier in North
Oh
America.
yeah.
And even though your price of eggs is out of control, hopefully that will come and go.
Well,
But
they're
there's
coming down just in time for a other holiday. So,
well, it's well, yeah, that's right. When is that, by the way? That's in
uh,
April.
yeah, that's in April. That's the week after Pesach.
See, if I was guiding regularly, I would have known that. I would
Hmm.
have I would have like, okay, Christian groups are
Yeah.
beginning to come, the Catholics are coming. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Easter Sunday is. You
The
know,
Catholics are coming. The Catholics are coming.
it's really it's astounding. So, in looking at all of this, I and in looking at the statistics about American Jews, it dawned on me what it is, why there's such a disconnect. When people always say to me, but like why do Jews vote for, Democrats? And with these statistics, all of a sudden it finally clicked. The question is, who is a Jew? Who is a Jew is actually pretty simple. You're born of a Jewish mother, or you convert to Judaism kahalacha, according a halachic conversion. Now, there are some people who say, no, the father, this, but generally for thousands of years, that has been the formula. You're a Jew. It does not mandate any specific beliefs.
True.
In other words, you can eat pork and still be a Jew. You can play with the Buddhists and still be a Jew. In the 70s, when Jews for Jesus was a big thing in America, or it was a known thing, I don't know if it was ever really big, you could have become a Jew for Jesus. 10 years later, decided that was not for you. You wanted to live a traditional Jewish life, and you did not have to convert. You were still Jewish. Okay. Contrast this with all branches of Christianity, with the Messianic world and the Hebrew roots world. To be part of that is not a birth thing,
Hmm.
rather, it's a belief thing.
Hmm.
I have accepted these elements of belief. Normally, with belief, it's assumed there is some kind of knowledge or involvement or something of that nature. So understand, we're talking about total opposites. So when
Yeah.
people say, because the assumption is Jews in America support Israel. And just the other day at Columbia University, they had Jewish students who were demonstrating, chaining themselves to the gates, the fence there, in support of Khalil, the terrorist supporter who is allegedly going to be deported. I'm not sure that he's going to be deported, by the way, because the courts are fighting it and the federal government has not proven a case. But this is a really, if I could say, like, okay, forget about the stuff that Trump said yesterday. Pay attention to this. But I know people will still say to me, I don't understand, why Jews, because you don't understand. I mentioned this before. I was born with brown eyes. My brother was born with blue eyes. Guess what? My mother had brown eyes. My father had blue eyes. What is that significant of? Absolutely nothing. Being born to a Jewish mother just meant that your mother was born to a Jewish mother, who was
Hmm.
born to a Jewish mother, who was born to a Jewish mother. It doesn't mean any kind of beliefs. It doesn't mean any kind of experiences. It doesn't mean any kind of commitments.
So the typical response, Hanok, would be to bring in scripture verses regarding this. And that's where people don't have an idea of what's really going on. And I think you put it pretty succinctly to me, is that, coming from a Christian background, that has nothing to do with where, when, how, or why you were born. Nothing at all.
No?
It has to do with a faith, or we could say belief system,
Yes,
period.
exactly.
Okay. And so then trying to put that over onto Israel as a state today. Now, some could call it a secular state, some could call it a religious state, whatever you want to term it. But the application for citizenship in Israel is not based upon Genesis chapter 1 or any other verse. It is based upon physical genealogy. Now, I can agree with that. I cannot agree with that. That makes no difference.
That's
That
that's
doesn't
exact that's
change.
exactly the point.
That
That's
doesn't
exactly the
change
point.
the
Right.
system.
No.
Okay.
No.
I can go to the United States, I can be here, and I can agree or disagree with whatever. It doesn't change the facts.
No.
All right. So this is what it is, period.
Yeah. It's interesting. Just when you were saying doesn't change the facts, I'm reminded of before the elections, presidential elections, all the people who promised that if Trump won, they would move.
Hmm.
I'm not aware that a single one did.
No, some I wish they
And
would.
it's really astounding. Um, and we're living in amazing times. Doesn't mean it's a smooth ride. It's going to be the opposite of a smooth
Hmm.
ride. But we are living in remarkable eras. But the question is, do people, like someone said to me the other day, so what's the one thing if you could ask people to do and they would do it, would be the most helpful? And I would say, learn, become more educated.
Hmm.
It's but in the same way at the demonstrators at these demonstrations, of course, universities can't articulate what they're demonstrating for. They just want to be part of the cause.
Well, you say learn, become more educated. I would have to give a bit of a nuance to that one. Is if you go to your local college and take a course on what it means to be a Jew, you're going to come out more confused than what you walked in because it is impossible, I believe, to figure out Judaism on my side of the pond.
Okay, but I've never suggested that any of our listeners take any kind of course
Yeah, no,
about
I didn't
Judaism.
say you did, but
I I
you're
I
talking about,
I want people to learn about Israel.
okay,
I want
so,
people to understand.
but here, what I'm saying is that when you say education, many people believe, okay, I need to take a course somewhere. All right,
No, I
that
didn't
that
mean
is
that.
not necessarily going to get them anywhere. What
No,
is going to get them somewhere is actually meeting Israelis, spending time. I part of my education process is I read the commentary of Nachman Kahana every week. I read the commentary of Rob Cook. I
but that
read,
that's
various.
educating yourself.
Yeah, that
That
is
that
that
that is
is more
educating
of
yourself.
a hands-on than somebody going to a college which is
I never
protesting
suggested that.
against Israel outside, you know. So
I
I
never
just
suggested people take a college course.
no,
But
I didn't
but
say that. I didn't say that.
but but
What
it's
I'm
it
doing is trying
yeah.
to is define the word educate because a lot of people when they hear the word educate, they think of a school system. I don't think that way. I think in
Hmm.
a different term.
I'm not sure how our listeners think about it or not, especially considering so many are homeschooled. I'm not so sure that they would think in terms of taking a course, but that's not what I meant. But
I didn't say that's what you
people
meant.
don't know much about Israel. They
Mhm.
don't know much about our history. They don't look how hard it is for us to get people to listen to this broadcast and to like and share it.
Well, and here's the thing. No matter how you want to define the word educate, the only people that are wanting to really be educated about Israel is those that are watching programming, podcasts, video that are actually coming from that have a basis of the land to begin with.
Yeah, I don't know how many people listen to the Israel update who have never been to Israel, have never had an interest in going to Israel. Um, no, I mean these are, it's a self-selected group of people.
Oh yeah, yeah, and it's a group of people that I would have to say kolakavot. More power to them that they are looking to actually understand the situation of what's going on outside of just the mainstream media or
Yeah.
outlets such as that.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
Passover's coming, and that throws in a whole other aspect of this, that we see these world events happening as we're preparing for Passover.
You know, within the Jewish community, there's an expression used very often as Pesach is approaching, that as we were redeemed in Nisan, referring to the original Pesach, that we too will be redeemed
Yeah,
in Nisan as well.
yeah.
So it's, we're hoping it's this year, hoping it's no later than next year. And we keep pushing forward. This
There
is,
you go.
this is what we do. Meanwhile, Delta Airlines is back, British Airways are back. Um, I hope people, pardon me, are getting ready to come.
That'd be a good thing. All right. Well, Hag Sameach.
Chag Sameach, Mike. All the best.
Talk to you next week.
Take care. See ya.